from UK Nets fans, and I'm joined, as ever, by Aidan and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BK to UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. It's been a little while since we've been back in your feeds for a full episode. Huge shout out to these two guys for the 15 minutes or less episode following draft night. If you've not checked that out, definitely go back in the feed and search out for that one for everything you need to know about the NBA draft that's just happened for the Brooklyn Nets. Today, we're going to talk about free agency so far. We're going to talk about KD re-signing for 4 more years and much more. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod. Check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of our episodes back. And we're now streaming on Twitch, on YouTube and on Periscope, so join us there too. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. Lads, I thought what I'd do is we need to treat this like a business. The Nets are treating this like a business. So we're just going to go through the players that have sadly no longer playing for the Nets. Then we're going to go into the players that we've brought in. And then we're going to go into the players that have re-signed, that are bringing the band back together. But starting chronologically, the first player out was, unfortunately, we got to go there straight away. No more Uncle Jeff. Cammy, how does that make you feel?
Very, very sad. Jeff Green came in last season. I don't think any of us were really expecting too much from him. Obviously coming in on that very, very, very cheap deal, and it proved to be a masterstroke on the Nets front office part. Jeff Green far outplayed the contract and was just fantastic role there. And there was just some fantastic moments. We're never going to forget some of those ferocious dunks, Iron Eagle, winning Dunkle Jeff kind of term, and that also now famous talk when we were kind of on that slump that got us back on track. And yeah, I think that the easiest thing to say is just best of luck in Denver, Jeff. It's a shame that we couldn't keep him around, but he secured the bag. We couldn't afford to give him that money, and yeah, you can't really blame him. So all the best to Jeff in Denver.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because all season you hear about how unhappy he was about the fact that he's doing these 1-year veteran minimum deals because, you know, he's probably come towards the end of his career. He needs that last big payday, and unfortunately, it's just something we weren't prepared to give him, unfortunately. So yeah, big nothing but love and positivity for Jeff Green. Another fan favorite who is sadly out the door is Spencer Dinwiddie. He's been signed and traded to the Washington Wizards after keeping us hanging on the details for a few days. But Spencer's going to be paid $63 million over 3 years, which is more than the Nets could realistically afford to pay for him when you take into account the tax implications and stuff like that. I've heard about, because we're so deep into the luxury tax, if you pay him $20 million a year, you got times it by 3. So you end up paying him $80 million a year in tax plus the actual salary. So it's just a bit of a tough one. In return, the Nets get a 2024 second-round pick, a second-round pick swap in 2025, the draft rights to a 2015 pick who's been stashed in Europe ever since, European center, I believe, and an $11.45 million traded player exception, which basically we need to use in the next year. So that could be interesting. Weirdly, the exception can be used in a trade or to claim a player off waivers. It can be divided up into little chunks as well, so you can do a 6.5 and a 5 player exception, which is cool. But it can't be used in a sign and trade without triggering the hard cap, whatever that is. Nor can it be used to sign players. For me, real good news for Spencer, who after getting healthy after that partial tear, gets to be the starting point guard for a team again, who still, at the time of recording, still have Bradley Beal, as well as some other exciting pickups that the Wizards have managed to snag. He gets a bit of a payday, which is great considering he's only kind of played a handful of games since that 2019 bubble. Obviously didn't play the bubble, then got sort of only a couple of games into this season. So it's really, really nice to Spencer to secure the bag there. I do think had he been fit last year, we would have gone further in the playoffs, and we wouldn't have had to rely on Mike James and stuff like that. But I think with the likes of Patty Mills coming through, which we'll speak about a little bit later, and the very exciting prospect of Cam Thomas, which you guys got me gassed up for in the 15 minutes or less draft episode, I think the Nets guard rotation is pretty darn solid. So as much as we'll miss Spencer, the character, I don't think he'll be missed too much on the floor. But yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Sean Marks does with that trade exception. So I think we're going to have to wait for that until grading this deal fully, really. So yeah, sucks to leave Spencer. Another one who I had a real soft spot. Really, like after a slow start, I had a soft spot for Landry Shamet, who got moved on draft night. But Aidan, you're going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I touched on the trade a bit during the 15 minutes or less episode. So yeah, Landry Shamet essentially got traded for Javon Carter and the draft rights to Deron Sharp. So an interesting trade. Obviously, Landry was a guy that was on a tradable contract, but I didn't actually expect him to get traded. Was it a good trade? I don't think we know the answer to that one yet, to be honest with you, because we need to wait and see what these guys are going to bring to the team. I mean, I really like Shamet. You obviously mentioned there that he had a slow start in Brooklyn, but he turned out to be a really valuable piece, especially when Joe Harris was struggling at times. So he was a really important guy there. Personally, I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over losing Shamet. I don't know if it was the best plan to trade him overall. Obviously, there's shooters out there. If we wanted to potentially pick up a guy like JJ Redick, if we were to release one of the guys that we have picked up, that can come in and shoot like Shamet. But he did bring more than his shooting. I think he was an underrated defender at times in Brooklyn, and it didn't really get talked about very much. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for him in Phoenix. But I think this trade personally speaks a lot about what the Nets think of these guys that they brought in, that they've drafted, which we'll obviously go on to talk about a wee bit more later on. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting trade to see if this is going to be one that we'll say Sean Marks won this clearly, because it could be one that maybe takes a couple of seasons before we make our mind up on that one. But we'll miss Sham. I think he's been an important player for us. But yeah, I think he'll go on to do well in Phoenix.
Good stuff. Thanks for everyone that's coming through on the chat at the moment. Please do drop any comments or questions that you have. Elliot from Hoopin' and Luton has been beating the drum about being not as glowing on Joe Harris, and he's entered the chat as Aidan is mid slander Joe Harris. I think that's those are big words. But thanks for coming in, Elliot. You're much appreciated. And then so we've also got a sort of a laundry list of players that haven't been traded, but they've been released, or there is simply no room on this team for them. And I just kind of wanted to get your guys' quick take on who you're going to miss the most. So I've got TLC, Tyler Johnson, Mike James, and Chris Chioza have basically got the "don't call us, we'll call you. It's not you, it's me" treatment. Cammy, coming to you first, I was wondering if there's anyone that you're particularly gonna miss.
Mike James. Now that's going to sound a bit weird considering he was the kind of least tenured Net of those that was kind of let go. But I just felt that there was something to his game that I would have liked to have seen a bit more of. And there's no doubt he'll probably get himself another deal in the NBA, whether it was, again, a money thing. There were perhaps some talks there, and it was became evident that we couldn't kind of do any deal. But just there were a few games he came in and looked really good. We obviously knew kind of his pedigree in Europe. And yeah, had a few all right games, could have done better than some of the others. But yeah, just the limited sample kind of has me wanting a little bit more. We're wanting to see a bit more, but obviously that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, I think you have to remember that Tyler Johnson, Mike James, and Chris Chioza only really saw minutes this year because of Spencer Dinwiddie's injury. They kind of shared those minutes amongst themselves at times. So we would have saw a lot more of them than we would have done if Spencer was fully fit. And I think bringing a guy in like Patty Mills, which we'll obviously talk on more later, kind of makes their role redundant. And it's interesting to say that because obviously the amount of injuries we've had at the guard position this year, you'd think, let's load up on them as much as possible as an insurance. But you've got to think there really isn't minutes there for those three guys this year. In terms of TLC, shout out to him. I thought he had a really good Olympics and I enjoyed watching him. And I think he's probably played himself into getting a contract somewhere in the NBA. But let's face it, it was one of the most disappointing second years as a Brooklyn player we've ever seen after how good he was in the bubble. And I don't think he earned a position on this team next year. So there's definitely better options than him. If I had to pick one, it'd probably be Tyler Johnson, just because I felt that he was always ready to come in and do a role. We've got TLC's biggest fan in the comments there. But as I mentioned, I think he'll go on and get a contract, as will some of the other guys, maybe not Chosa, but I would have liked to see Tyler Johnson come back just as a bit of an insurance piece.
Yeah, I think Tyler Johnson and Mike James, they feel sort of like a similar player in terms of what they were brought in to do. And you touched on it, because we had so many injuries and stuff like that. We just need more bodies. I think both Johnson and James came up huge in the regular season and playoffs respectively. Mike James, I think especially to be flown in from Russia and pretty much straight away into the team and contributing in a pretty major way. He played 20 minutes in one of those games in the playoffs, which is crazy. And as much as we like to give him stick, Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot has his moments of brilliance. Does love an empty arena. Obviously performed exceedingly well in the bubble, performed well in the Olympics, where there were few, if any, fans, I think. But you guys know who I'm going to say. I'm going to miss Cheese. I'm going to miss Chris Chiosa like mad. I love myself an undersized, quick guard. But yeah, I don't know whether or not we'll see him in the NBA. He might be Europe bound or somewhere else. But yeah, I wish him nothing but the best. But yeah, that's it on the people that have been given their marching orders or that have left for greener pastures. So now we're going to talk about the players that are coming in. And we've touched on them a little bit before. Draft night trade, Javon Carter.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I couldn't tell you too much about Javon Carter. I heard his name and it was the first time I'd heard it. I think the biggest takeaway I have on him was your tweet banged with the Carter 4 jersey. That got quite a lot of traction. If he can be anything like one of the previous Carters that played for the Nets, namely Vince, yeah, we might be all right. He's got the same bald head that Vince has, so who knows? Maybe Vince is second, but I mean, Javon Carter, I can't see him being a major part of this rotation. But we'll wait and see. Maybe one of those kind of Uncle Jeff kind of signings where everyone's not really expecting much, but he maybe comes and surprises us a little.
Yeah, I think he's one of these guys. He's only 25, which I find crazy because for some reason I've got an idea that Javon Carter's been around for ages, but he's one of those guys that brings something else. He's a defensive guard. He knows his role, which is nice. We just need a few more of those guys around that know their role. They're quite happy if they're going to get a DNP or they're going to get 25 minutes in a game where they can come on and defend a really talented point guard or something like that. So yeah, it's nice to have a few gritty defenders around there. As Cammy said, I don't know what his role's going to be, if he's going to be in this rotation, but we'll soon see if he was one of the names in that trade that the Nets wanted to get, or if he was just a filler piece. So yeah, interesting pickup. We'll wait and see how he does.
Nice. We've also got, talking of defense, we've also got James Johnson, who, when I Googled him, or when I looked on YouTube, he had as many fight highlights as he did ball hand, actual basketball highlights. So what do you make of the new Johnson come through?
Again, I can't say no too much, but to be a 12-year vet in the league, you've obviously done something right. As you say, Matt, kind of known for being a bit of a bully, bit of a kind of bruiser, and that's something I felt we missed at times. And just when other teams maybe target our stars, we've got a guy who can just kind of go over, shove them, and he just looks like a total hard man, totally tatted up. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see the kind of role he plays, especially given the Nets announced him as a forward centre, and many were quick to point out that he's never really played centre. So maybe we've accidentally given away a plan already, playing him as a small ball, small as 6'7". So not huge, but we have seen a kind of small ball used throughout the course of last season. So yeah, maybe come in and just battle a few boys and make sure that the stars can do their job. And I mean, like Aidan was saying, we need players to kind of know the roles. If he's happy to come in and just push folk out 8, set solid screens, and just get the other guys free, then yeah, I don't think he can complain. Anything he does on the kind of offensive end, great. Not expected much. It's really the defense that we kind of need him for.
Yeah, nice. I think it would have been nice to have someone of James Johnson's particular skills to combat the PJ Tuckers of the world. So when he's, you know, happy slapping Kevin Durant or poking him in the eye, you get James Johnson there just to politely remind him not to. You know, that kind of stuff would be really, really nice. So yeah, I'm excited about James Johnson too. I'm also very, very excited about a man who had himself a very good Olympics, Patty Mills. What a scoop! What a score!
Yeah, A+ for me. That's one of the best moves that I've seen in free agency, and a really good move for the Nets that I reckon that a lot of teams are really jealous of. I know there was a few other teams in for Mills contenders, so yeah, love to see the Nets come out and win a free agent like that. And I think he probably could have seen more money. He obviously got that mid-level exception. I think it's over 2 years as well, which seems like a bargain to get Patty Mills and that type of money. But you can probably thank Sean Marks and the Spurs connection within the Nets organisation for that one. So yeah, we're chuffed to bits to have him. Yeah, in terms of Mills as a player, he's one of those guys that he's been around the league for so long, but he doesn't really get talked about that much. And I think a lot of that's probably down to the fact that he's been playing for the Spurs. Obviously, he's been there for 10 years, and the Spurs are the most hush-hush organisation that we've got in the league. And anything that happens seems to be under wraps there. But he's just a guy that knows his role perfectly. I've said that phrase again, but he probably epitomises the phrase. He knows his role perfectly as a guard. In terms of fit, he's the guy that you're wanting to fill those minutes where Harden and Kyrie aren't on the court. And we missed that last season when Spencer Dinwiddie was out. I don't care what anyone says about Dinwiddie. He would have been completely needed last year. And Mills will hopefully fill in that gap this year. And I'm really excited about that. He's really unselfish. He's efficient. And he's just really talented. I was having a look at his shooting percentages over the last few years, and he was actually close to the 50-40-90 club last year. He had 50 in 2-pointers, 90 in free throws. I think he was about 0.375 in 3-pointers. And you've got to think in Brooklyn, with all the open looks he's going to get, he's going to raise that up. So that'd be quite fun. Yeah, I just think he's the perfect person to take that mid-level exception this year. And yeah, I think I'm glad we brought Mills in, because if we didn't, I'd probably be grading this off-season so far as like a C or a D. But I think he brings it up to like a B+ because of how good he is. So yeah, really excited by this move.
Yeah, he's got that perfect blend of veteran. He's still good. He's a veteran, so he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's a champion. So he's got those three absolute sort of you can't really buy that really. So that's the exact kind of person that you want to be, bringing on to this team with the aspirations we have. But another one that has come through that kind of caught me off guard was DeAndre Bembry. Not gonna lie, I've said multiple times on this podcast that I don't watch any non-Nets basketball. Never heard of him. So I've done my due diligence. I've done some reading up. He's a 6'5" guard forward, which is what they've unveiled him as. So he's basically just an auxiliary piece that they're going to slot in wherever they want. He signed a one-year vet minimum after being cut by Toronto, which is always a little bit worrying. But you've got to trust in Marks and all that kind of stuff. So I've done a bit of digging, and I found an article by Samson Folk on Raptors Republic, which is it's called DeAndre Bembry and the Art of Providing. Definitely worth a read if you want to get yourself hyped on Bembry. It's basically just a glowing article about all the stuff he does and everything you'd want from a role player. He's defensively minded. He's quick on his feet. He slashes to the basket. He's provided some really good defense, particularly on people like Ja Morant and stuff last year. So, you got to have a pretty decent amount of foot speed to keep up with Ja Morant. He's also a playmaker, and he's also a net positive on plus minus. So if you want to get into your stats and stuff, then, he's all good there. And I think from these moves, what I've seen from Sean Marks is they want to get people in that when the big three are off the floor, they can just keep it together. We can steady the ship. We can stop opposing teams' runs and stuff like that. So I think with that in mind, I think that all things point to a positive move on the Nets' part. They went into this article again. I'm probably going to share this again to UK Nets fans on Twitter. But they did a bit of a deep dive about when they played against the Wizards, and he spent a lot of time he gets the defensive assignment for the opponent's best perimeter player, basically. So he spent a lot of time guarding Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, and it was about 16 minutes of play guarding those two players, they scored 2 points. So, you got to be pretty decent to keep a lid on Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal when you're playing the Wizards. He's adept at getting steals and tips to kick off fast breaks, and he loves driving to the rim. He's also a pretty good passer, likes throwing lobs to dunkers. So, maybe Blake's got one more in him, and we could set the internet on fire again. But he's basically got no shooting about him. I think his 3% shot, 3% 3-point percentage is something like 26%. So he's not going to be shooting any threes. But we've got shooting coming out of our ears. So he's a Swiss Army knife that's going to fit in somewhere else. And I'm actually incredibly excited about this guy, and it's all off the back of that one article, and I've absolutely drunk the Kool-Aid. But you speak, you talk to Raptor fans, and you see him on Twitter and stuff, and they're all sad to see him go. They all want say that we've got a good one. So you got to trust that, really. So that's all the new faces. But now I think we this is where it gets exciting. So I think I want to paint a picture of where you guys were when the news broke. But we had a pretty exciting piece of news that someone re-signed. And Cammy, I'm going to give you the mic on this one to talk about this exciting piece of news.
So the exciting piece of news is that Kevin Durant, the world's best basketball player, has re-signed with Brooklyn. I mean, 1 down, 2 to go. Just after the season he had, coming off the injury that he had, I have absolutely no doubt that this man is still going to be getting buckets easily at 37-year-old. And I think had it not been for the kind of NBA rules, it would have probably been a 5-year deal. But he would have probably still done amazing at 38. And depending on how things are going, he may well just opt to end his career in Brooklyn, stay for an extra year or two. I mean, yeah, absolutely phenomenal. The words, there aren't words to describe it. I think there were so many times last season where we used words, but they really didn't do Kevin Durant's play justice. Those playoff games in particular will go down in kind of Nets history. And yes, he should have won the shoe size actually that he is, rather than win a bigger shoe size. But even still, just those games, the way he took the team on his back, that is the world's best basketball player, and we have him locked up for the next 4-5 years. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun time. I mean, I think we've all kind of always discussed in the Discord, what will happen kind of come the time of the renewals, and they're going to opt in, opt out, stay, leave, whatever. But yeah, I think given KD's stayed, it would be a pretty safe bet to say James Harden and Kyrie Irving will sign extensions when they can do so. KD as well, 26.9 points last season, 7.1 rebounds and 5.6 assists. Given this is going to be a full season for him again, I think he's going to better them, provided he can stay fit and avoids all this kind of health and safety nonsense that kept him out for multiple times. Kevin Durant is going to have 30 plus points next year on average. I'm calling it now. That's my far too early prediction for this season.
Love that. We haven't even done a prediction podcast, so that's the pre-prediction pod prediction. I love that.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect it to happen so early. It actually caught me a bit off guard. And I think, it's just been one of those things where obviously you can talk about Kevin Durant as the player, but if you look at what this means for Brooklyn, as Cammy touched on there, it just extends our window of where we can win. I mean, we've kind of talked about that 3-year window that we had of Kevin Durant and Kyrie. Obviously, for the first year, we didn't even have Kevin Durant. And we were like, right, so we've essentially only got 2 years where we need to win. And now we can start looking at it like, I mean, you don't take your foot off the gas with it. You can win for longer and be one of the most dominant teams in NBA history. And I find that really exciting. I think it just speaks a lot as to what the Nets are doing. Obviously, we saw Kevin Durant in Golden State. He obviously went there, and then when he was extending his contract there, he only extended it for another year. So obviously that's in Golden State, where it was one of the greatest teams of all time. But he's looked at Brooklyn and he's decided to extend for another 4 years. So I mean, it's just incredible, and I really do hope this is a domino effect, as Cammy says, of 1 down, 2 to go, and we see Harden and Kyrie coming back soon, because just the thought of seeing those 3 guys playing basketball for Brooklyn for another 5-6 years is just such a good feeling. And I'm so happy that we get to see these guys, and hopefully we'll see a good few championships here, because it's not going to get any better than this.
Yeah, it physically can it? Like, this couldn't be any better news. Yeah, so it takes KD up until he's 37 years old, I believe. So I was actually, Cammy, I was listening to your guys' podcast, Mo Moonsey and the Hoop Genius podcast, and they were chatting about some general NBA stuff, but I thought it really applied to this Nets team. It's just like Kevin Durant, when he gets old, tall doesn't get old. Do you know what I mean? If you're relying on your quickness and your agility and things like that, that stuff slows down over time. You can still be, old and tall, and he can still shoot over people when he's 39. Do you know what I mean? So given how progressive the kind of nutrition and health and sort of wellness and stuff that is in the Nets specifically, but also in the NBA in general, people are playing for longer. So yeah, I've got no worries that he could sign for 4 more years after this one, and then he'll retire. But no, it's just incredibly exciting. And it's just, I think it speaks to Sean Marks again, maybe looking, because I think where KD signed up to that's when we start actually having our own picks again as well. So once this one all comes to an end, then it all resets again, and then we can all start moving, and it becomes a whole other chapter. So yeah, it's just incredibly exciting. But yeah, another re-signing, a certain Mr. Blake Griffin, obviously came through, joined us last year after being bought out by the Detroit Pistons, who I think he gave a good amount of money to come join the Nets. But let's not muck about. He's still getting a good amount of money for the Detroit Pistons for not playing for him. So he's come back on a veterans minimum for 1 more year. I don't think this is really going to be coming as a surprise to anyone, where Sean Marks kind of publicly said that they were planning to re-sign Blake Griffin. He said he brought a lot of stuff behind the scenes in the locker room, those intangibles. Personally speaking, I loved just seeing him sort of diving around and getting after loose balls and that kind of heart and hustle that, you could understand. Blake is, he's achieved a lot in his NBA career. He's not winding down, but he's past his athletic peak. So you can understand it if, they kind of start to tone down what they do, but that is absolutely not what he's done. He's kept it ramped up. He's learning to kind of be a kind of a player that plays differently to what he did. So he's still got hops as well, turns out, after the media saying about him being washed. So if he can, take that through to an entire season rather than just, the part way through the season that we got, because don't forget that I think Detroit sort of benched him while they were sort of sussing out what they were going to do with him. So if he can keep that up for a whole season and he's ready for the playoffs, then yeah, I'm all in for this one. And glad to have Blake Griffin back. And another one that's come back that is just as big a heart Bruce Brown is back. Aidan, what do you make of that?
Yeah, absolutely delighted to have Bruce back. And obviously for us, it's no secret that we're all massive fans of Bruce Brown as a person and as a player. And so it's not hard to root for this move. I think many a Nets fan would have probably feared that Bruce would have had received a nice offer somewhere, potentially a 3-year deal somewhere. The Nets would have had to consider to match that. So it is nice that we can get him in that qualifying offer for this year. And then we obviously get another year of him, seeing what he can do. And then he will be a free agent at the end of next season. But hopefully we can get a championship and encourage him to come back with that. But in terms of Bruce Brown, I mean, his nickname, Biggie Small, sums him up perfectly as a player. He's basically a small guy doing a big man's role. And it's just incredible at the speed of a guard as well. And I think we were all taken back with how well he done that role. I remember the first time when that lineup was announced that he was at the 5 with the four, the big four, and we were going, what's going on here? And he just was incredible that night. I think he got close to 30 points or whatever. But yeah, it's in terms of obviously him not getting an offer elsewhere, I find it really interesting because I think it's just such a niche role that he's got that the league it's like team specific, if you know what I know what I mean. I think it's like teams have certain players where they're so valuable to them, but they maybe don't share that value with the rest of the league. And I don't know if it's maybe down to the fact he's not a shooter. I think he certainly improved last year, but yeah, I think it's just one of those cases where he's important to the Nets and he's such a good player, but would he fit in somewhere else? I don't know. But it's great for us because obviously we get him on that deal. We don't need to worry about paying him this year. And adding to that mammoth luxury tax that we're already paying. So I guess that's nice to have. But yeah, and I'm delighted he's going to be back next year because I don't think it would feel right winning a championship next year if Bruce Brown wasn't there as well. So yeah, I think he's going to be great again next year. And he's obviously getting older and learning more. So he's going to get even more experience. Yeah, I think he's going to be even better this year. So delighted to have him back.
Love that. He's still so young as well. What is he, 24, I think?
Yeah. Thank you.
He's a young lad. So yeah, he's still got lots and lots of room to improve, and yeah, you're definitely going to do that when you're playing with the players that he's playing with. So yeah, incredibly excited. So that's basically what we've got on the docket so far. I mean, I think what are we, a week into free agency? We've still got moves to make. We've got vet minimums that we can chuck about. We've obviously got that trade exception from the Dinwiddie deal. So I just wanted to know what you guys thought, and Cammy, I'll come to you first. Where do you think any more moves left to make? Is that possible? What do you think they've got up their sleeve?
There's definitely going to be more moves. I think with that exception there, that's a lot of money that we could potentially trade for someone. Whether we maybe go after Kevin Love, that's also been rumoured for some time. That would maybe help things out cap wise. If we've got that exception, he's obviously on a fair bit of money. If he's not bought out, well, could maybe work there. Another move for a vet min could well be LaMarcus Aldridge. I'd seen recently that he's considering coming back to the league. Now that would, if I've read it correctly, would require all 30 team, well, all 29, including ourselves, who, if we were to go for him, to basically approve for him to return. And that's basically other contenders saying, yeah, we'll let you come back so you can join a contender again. So how likely it is, I don't know. I can't see many teams going, yeah, we'll just agree to strengthen another team. There may be other ways about it. But yeah, I think the way things went for Aldridge in Brooklyn, the way we treated him when kind of his heart problem came to light, I'd like to think that there's maybe something there. There's certainly unfinished business. And if we could add LaMarcus Aldridge to the team, I'd certainly be really happy.
Yeah, I don't think we're done, as Cammy says, but I think it's time now where we're going to have to get quite creative, and it's not going to be as straightforward as just bringing guys in, just because free agency has dried up a little bit. And yeah, I think we could certainly, the heat's going to pick up in the trade market over the next few weeks now that free agents have signed places. And yeah, I do expect the Nets to do potentially one, potentially two trades. We know what Sean Marks is like. He's never done, and I can see him certainly making a few moves. And I think we were all a bit disappointed in the return for Spencer Dinwiddie, and we were expecting a bit more. And it's not often that Sean Marks comes out of a trade and we don't think, wow, he's pulled off another heist. So I do expect him to do something. I don't believe the news that DeAndre Jordan's safe, as some journalists are making out. I think that the Nets would be crazy not to speak to teams about him at least. And again, I said it earlier in the off-season that I think Joe Harris is certainly going to be getting mentioned in trade talks too. Just because we don't have too many assets, then he's one of the only tradable pieces. So we'll wait and see what happens there. In terms of kind of the off-season itself and this summer, I can't go over a grade of a B or a B+ until we fix our biggest hole, which is a dominant centre. And obviously, Cammy mentioned LaMarcus Aldridge there, and I don't even feel that he would fill that hole, which we've been having the issue with for so long, where we just need a centre who can manage other dominant centres, because it seems to be every single night that we're getting guys coming in, getting 27 and 15, 20 and 20. And I just want a guy that can come in, rebound well, stop guys, restrict them from just having their way every single night. And I think the only way we can do that is through a trade. And I know people have been talking about Miles Turner. I don't think it's going to be possible to bring someone like that in. But there's going to be opportunities to bring other big guys in where we've potentially got shooters that teams will want. So, yeah, I hope the Nets are looking for a centre. I don't know if they are, but it's certainly something that would make me go into this season a lot more confident. If we can get a big guy in there that can just stop other big guys. And I don't think it's too much to ask for. So hopefully they can pull something off.
It feels like we've been asking for the same thing for like 3-4 off seasons, like defense and bigs. So we're getting the defense in, which feels good. But yeah, like you say, I'd love a big. And I was actually doing a bit of reading on the DeAndre Jordan situation, because it is weird, isn't it? He hasn't played at all for ages. Didn't really sniff the playoffs at all, I think. I did some reading, and per Christian Winfield said the Nets were unwilling to part ways with DeAndre Jordan as part of the deals, despite his position fixed at the end of the rotation, league sources tell the news. Jordan signed a 4-year deal worth $40 million in the same offseason that the Nets signed both Irving and Kevin Durant. He's still owed $20 million, but his bond with the Brooklyn Big Three is too strong for a deal to consummate, per source. Which I think is a bit mad, considering that this is pre the James Harden trade, and James Harden just tears strips out of him all the time. And maybe that's just the fiery kind of high performance athlete side of it coming out, and it's all just strictly basketball, and off the court they're all good. But on the Nets Daily article that I read as well, sources told Nets Daily that the Nets were offering one or both of their first round picks on draft night to move off of DeAndre Jordan's contract, but they got no takers. So no one wants DeAndre Jordan. So this is where it goes back to what you guys were saying, that, the only other tradable assets that we have are Joe Harris and potentially Nick Claxton. So, as much as we don't want to move off of those guys, is it collateral damage just to free up another $10 million and another roster spot? I think the person that doesn't fit for me still is Alize Johnson. I think he's probably at the most risk of being sort of cut. I don't know how it works, or waived, or I think, I'm not sure how guaranteed his money is this year. But I think possibly after Summer League, and we're going to see a bit more shape of what this Sharp fellow has, Day'Ron Sharp, see what he's like, because obviously he's touted as a super good rebounder. He's a big body, and maybe he kind of then leapfrogs Alize, and he gets cut because of X, Y, and Z. But yeah, Kevin Love I think is a great shout. And I just don't know. But then saying that at the same time, I'm literally arguing with myself as I'm talking. I think had Spencer Dinwiddie been healthy last year, we would have got significantly further in the playoffs, right? So that goes to show that although we don't have that traditional big, although we don't have, those big hulking bodies to kind of deal with those interior threats, we've got so much else that kind of sort of papers over it. So I don't know if we just try that again and we shore up their guard rotation and we get, it's just weird, isn't it? So I think maybe, I don't know what we're going to do, but I think you're right in there's something's going to happen. And it could be Kevin Love. It could be someone, the signings that we made weren't particularly box office in terms of the names. But, saying that, and, I'm outing myself as a terrible overall basketball fan. I didn't know who Bruce Brown was last year. I didn't know who Landry Shamet was last year. So, and I loved them. So, there we are. Turns out Sean Marks is way better at this than I am. Who knew? So yeah, it's a tricky one. So as it stands, we are currently 10 minutes away from the Nets tipping off against the Memphis Grizzlies in Summer League. We'll also play the Bucks on Wednesday, the Wizards on Thursday, if they can field a team, if they've got enough healthy bodies, before rounding out on Sunday against San Antonio. Summer League's a bit of a tricky one. Are you guys looking forward to it at all? Aidan, let's come to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing our rookies. I'm not totally excited for it. I don't know. I think just over the last few years where Summer League hasn't been that exciting for the Nets because we haven't really had high draft picks, that I've kind of fell out of love with it a wee bit. But yeah, I think you touched on it earlier about Alize Johnson. Obviously, it's going to be quite telling to see how he does in Summer League. I feel like he needs to go in there and totally dominate and be like the player of the tournament almost to avoid being on the chopping block for a potential space for another vet min. But yeah, in terms of our rookies, I'm really looking forward to seeing Thomas and Sharp play. I was talking to Matt before we went on. Just saying that the last few summer leagues, every single time our star rookie has been injured, like Karis LeVert was injured, Jarrett Allen was injured, Nick Claxton was injured. So it's going to be nice to actually see our guys, pending no injury. I hope I've not cursed that there. But yeah, just excited to see what these guys can do. It's a weird one because it's like, as like the Nets are contenders, it's not really that important for us to see our guys do really well, because these guys are always going to be pieces for the future or trade pieces. So it's hard to get too excited about it. But in terms of around the league, I mean, seeing guys like Cade Cunningham play is going to be really fun, and just in general, just seeing all the new rookies come in, it's going to be good season basketball again. But yeah, I think potentially it's just because the Olympics has just been on and I've had my basketball fix that I'm really not that bothered for it. So we'll wait and see. But yeah, hopefully our guys do well.
I'm in the same boat. I'm not entirely fussed for it. I'm just hoping that we also have a clean bill of health after it. Maybe have a wee kind of star can come out of nowhere, whether that is one of our new rookies or just one of these other guys we've offered a deal to who went undrafted or whatever. And yeah, it's a strange one. As Aidan says, it doesn't really kind of mean too much for us. These guys aren't going to be really anywhere near the top of the rotation unless someone does turn out to be absolutely unbelievable. But the chances of that are highly, highly slim. So nice to get Nets basketball back. And then, yeah, as Aidan says, nice to kind of see the kind of top rookies, Cade Cunninghams and whatnot, kind of get their first taste of NBA action.
Can I just say quickly as well, just you touched on Nick Claxton there as being a tradable piece, Matt. I saw that he was meant to be in the Summer League team, but he got pulled at the last minute. I don't know what that was all about. I don't think it's COVID related because, I mean, he's already had COVID, but we know that doesn't mean anything now. But yeah, I find that quite interesting as well. I wonder what's going on there. I hope it's not a trade, and it's just they've decided he's far too good to be there.
Yeah, I hope that's what that is. They know what they need to know about Nick Claxton. They got a couple of years of tape on him. He was, his first year he was in and out of Long Island. He's spent enough time with the team practicing every day. They're going to know the crack with him. I think, with all these, I think because we're so light on picks going forward, following the Harden trade, I think we're just trying to get as many sort of prospects, but under sort of in front of our eyes as we can, and we're just going to see what we've got. So that's why we've got so many sort of young and up and comers. But yeah, I would love to see all these people do well. I think we've got a couple of shooters as well coming through. I think that Zagorowski you guys said was a shooter. This Kessler Edwards is a shooter. So yeah, it's going to be nice to see some people coming through on Summer League. But yeah, I think it's one of those you'll check the highlights, you'll check the the scores, and you keep an eye on it on Twitter, but you're not going to go out and try and rewatch the whole game. But yeah, one to watch. But we've got a listener question come through from Kenwin Dennis. So thanks very much for that. He does ask, what do y'all think about the Marks off-season signings? Unfortunately, buddy, you're going to have to skip back a little bit and rewatch that. We have gone through that in some depth. But who should Nash start next season? I don't think the starting five is going to be in much doubt. I don't think it's going to look too much different. But who do you see as like those kind of 6th and 7th men coming off the bench? Cammy, let's go to you.
I mean, I think it depends on what the kind of centre situation is. You'd imagine Bruce Brown will probably be 6th man or 7th man. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think, as I say, it's going to depend a lot on who we're bringing at centre. If we're not going to bring in a proper big, there's going to be a fair bit of rotation. I think it will be a kind of situational thing. So that'll obviously adjust the lineup fairly regularly. But as you say, I think the starting 5, well, 4 of the starting 5 are pretty much shoe-ins. Your KD, Kyrie, Harden, and Joe Harris. It's then just a case of who takes that 5 spot. Nick Claxton, could this be a breakout year for him? I don't know. I'd like to hope so, because if he can kind of turn things on and live up to the potential he's shown already, well, we could be laughing and be kind of sorted. I'm not sure what he's done in the off-season. I felt he had to still buck up a little bit more, even if he had done that kind of for last season. But we might actually get by all right with Clax. But his lack of experience could honestly kind of hinder us a bit.
Yeah, I mean, and the question is, who should he start? And in my opinion, it should change a bit. I think it should be Harden, Kyrie, Durant, Griffin, and Claxton, and have Joe Harris off the bench. I think he'd benefit from that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it will be what it was essentially last year with Blake at the 5, and then off the bench you're looking at Patty Mills. I think will probably be the 6th man in my eyes, and then Bruce Brown, and then Claxton, and then probably someone like James Johnson or another centre that we get in. So I think the team will probably pick itself, and it's just depending. The real questions are who's going to get that like 8-9 man slot at the end of the bench. So we'll wait and see.
It's weird, isn't it? Because you say how much of a, not a lackluster, but not a, we didn't absolutely smash it out of the park with free agency yet. But then you stop to remember, like, hang on a minute, this roster that we've got, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel with it. It's pretty good. So yeah, I think I kind of agree with you, Aidan. I think it's the big 4. So, well, the big 3.5, the regular season big 4, with Harden at the point, Kyrie Irving, Joe Harris, KD, and I'm going to say probably Blake at the 5, unless they start trying to get DJ to start earning that money randomly. And then, yeah, I'm so excited about Patty Mills, man. I cannot wait. I think he's going to get tons and tons of minutes. I think they're going to be a little bit more cautious with minutes this year, just because, especially with KD, he just coming off that Achilles tear, just went deep into the playoffs, straight into the Olympics, and then the season returns in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. So there's not a lot of time at all. So yeah, excited to see some Patty Mills, and I just want to see James Johnson punch someone in the face. That would be absolutely blinding. So thanks for the question, Kenwin. That's pretty much all we got time for today. A note on Liberty Lowdown: we're still going to be coming at you with keeping an eye on the ladies over at the New York Liberty, but if you didn't know, the WNBA has been on a hiatus for the Olympics, so they've got a good few weeks without playing. So it's going to be in about another week or so. So maybe next time we're in your feed, we can talk about the next game, which is going to be against the Minnesota Lynx. But that's it. I mean, before we get out of there, I've just got to give a shout out to myself and give myself a little pat on the back, because I'm now part of the writing team for Nets Republic. So give them a follow. Check out my latest article. It's all about what the Nets should be doing with their jerseys for this year. But that's it. Thanks for coming through in the comments. Like, subscribe, join us, talk to us about Nets. And yeah, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. Peace.